You made a mistake. Marcus Walker looked at the towering alien commander across the enrollment chamber and said it without anger, without fear, and without raising his voice. The entire room went silent. Not because they respected him, because they could not understand why a human standing among the galaxy's most dangerous predators sounded like he belonged there. The Varkan Predator Academy was not built for humans. It was carved into the black cliffs of Ver Prime, a place where the strongest species in known space sent their most promising hunters to learn discipline, strategy, and survival. For generations, the Academy had trained creatures with armored skin, enhanced senses, and instincts designed for environments that would break most species. Then the system made a mistake. One name appeared on the official roster that nobody expected to see. Marcus Walker. Human. The announcement screen displayed his information above the massive entrance hall. Height, 6 feet 1 inch. Weight, 190 pounds. Species, human. Survival classification, moderate adaptation. The students stared at the screen, then at Marcus. Some laughed quietly. Others simply looked confused. A human was not supposed to be here. Commander Kale Dravik stepped forward. The Karuan warrior was nearly 8 feet tall, covered in dark protective plates, and carried the reputation of a legend. He had trained hundreds of elite predators. He had never trained a human. This academy accepts hunters, Kale said, his deep voice echoing through the chamber. Not fragile species searching for confidence. Marcus looked around the room. Every face was different, but the expression was the same. They had already decided what he was. Weak. Out of place. A mistake. Marcus had seen that look before. On distant colonies. During rescue missions. In conference rooms where people judged a person before hearing their story. He learned a long time ago that trying to change someone's mind with words rarely worked. So he simply picked up his identification badge and asked, "Where is my assigned room?" A few students laughed louder this time. One of them, a young Karuan named Rax, stepped closer. "You are not going to explain yourself?" Marcus looked at him. Would it change anything? That answer caught Rax off guard. Nearby, a Veyrothi student named Lyra Voss watched carefully. Unlike the others, she was not laughing. She noticed something unusual. Marcus was not trying to impress anyone. He was not pretending to be fearless. He was studying the room, the exits, the people, the patterns. The academy had taught every predator to observe their target. But Marcus seemed to be observing everything. Kale noticed it too, though he dismissed it as a survival habit from a weaker species. "You will begin training at sunrise," Kale said. "Most students discover very quickly if they belong here." Marcus nodded. "I figured." The commander turned away, convinced the matter was settled. The other students followed, still whispering about the strange human who had somehow walked into the greatest predator academy in the galaxy. They believed Marcus Walker was the easiest student they would ever challenge. They believed he had entered the wrong place. They did not know the truth yet. Humanity had never survived because it was the strongest species in the room. Humanity survived because it learned how to adapt when it was not. And by the end of his first day at Varkan Academy, every predator would begin asking the same question. Why did the creature with no claws look like it already knew how to survive? The first lesson at Varkan Academy was simple. Survive the morning. Marcus Walker quickly learned that nobody there cared about his experience, his past missions, or the fact that humans had crossed half the galaxy before most of these students had ever left their home planets. To them, he was still the strange creature without claws, armor, or enhanced senses. The training grounds opened at sunrise beneath the cold orange light of Ver Prime. The arena stretched across several acres of artificial wilderness, filled with rocky terrain, thick forests, and changing weather conditions designed to test the limits of every species. Commander Kale Dravik stood above the field with his arms crossed. "Today's evaluation measures instinct," he announced. "Speed, awareness, decision-making. The environment does not care what species you are." The students moved forward confidently. They had done this before. They knew how to track movement, how to read scents, how to use their natural abilities. Marcus simply looked around. He touched the ground. He studied the wind. He watched the way the trees moved. Rax noticed and laughed. "Are you waiting for the planet to introduce itself?" Marcus looked back at him. "No, I am figuring out what it is trying to tell me." The answer made several students exchange confused looks. To them, survival was about overpowering a threat. To Marcus, survival started by understanding it. The first challenge began. Students were given 1 hour to reach a marked location several miles away. Most of them immediately rushed ahead. They wanted to prove their strength. They jumped across gaps, moved through obstacles, and competed against each other. Marcus did not follow. He walked slowly. He stopped often. He watched. Lyra Voss noticed from a distance. She had expected the human to struggle immediately, but something felt wrong. Marcus was not lost. He was mapping everything. 20 minutes into the exercise, several students began realizing the environment was changing. The artificial forest was not random. The academy had designed it to confuse their senses. Paths moved. Signals shifted. Familiar landmarks disappeared. The stronger students became frustrated because their usual advantages were not helping them. Marcus continued forward. When Lyra finally caught up with him, she asked, "How are you doing this?" Marcus looked at the terrain ahead. Doing what? Finding the correct path. He shrugged. I am not finding the path. I am finding the mistakes. Lyra studied him carefully. That answer stayed with her. The other students searched for advantages. Marcus searched for weaknesses. Near the end of the course, an emergency alarm suddenly sounded across the training zone. The academy rarely interrupted an evaluation. Every student stopped. A large section of the artificial environment had malfunctioned. The safety systems were offline, and several students were trapped inside a restricted zone. Kale immediately ordered instructors to move in. The younger students began backing away, uncertain for the first time that day. Marcus looked toward the restricted area. The problem was obvious to him. The system failure had created a pattern. The terrain was not unstable everywhere. Only one route was becoming dangerous. You are not going in there, Kale said when he saw Marcus moving forward. Marcus stopped. Why? The commander stepped closer. Because you are not trained for this environment. Marcus looked at the trapped students in the distance. Neither were they. For a moment, nobody spoke. Kale expected fear. He expected hesitation. Instead, Marcus simply adjusted the equipment on his training belt and walked toward the restricted zone. Lyra watched him disappear into the trees. For the first time since Marcus arrived, she wondered if the mistake was not that a human had entered the academy. Maybe the mistake was believing the academy had nothing to learn from him. Marcus Walker had learned one thing during his years on Dangerous Worlds. The moment people told him not to do something was usually the moment he needed to understand why. The restricted zone of Varkun Academy disappeared behind the trees as Marcus moved deeper into the artificial wilderness. The warning lights flashed across the landscape, and the automated voice repeated the same message. Training environment unstable. Return to safe area immediately. Marcus ignored the message. Not because he wanted to prove a point. Not because he wanted attention. He simply knew something the others did not. Systems failed in patterns. People panicked randomly. The difference mattered. Behind him, several instructors followed at a distance, unsure whether to stop him or watch. Commander Kale Dravik stood among them with a hard expression. He is making a mistake, one instructor said. Kale did not answer immediately. His eyes stayed fixed on the human moving through the trees. Perhaps, he finally replied. But I want to see what kind. Inside the restricted zone, Marcus found the first group of students near a collapsed training marker. They were not injured, but they were confused. Their natural senses had failed them because the environmental system was creating false signals. The exit is that way, one student said, pointing toward a narrow path between the rocks. Marcus looked at the path and shook his head. No, that is where the system wants you to go. The students stared at him. A young predator species with sharp hearing tilted its head. You expect us to believe your eyes are better than our senses? Marcus looked back calmly. No, I expect you to believe the results. He picked up a small piece of broken equipment from the ground. It was a sensor module from the academy. This is sending false location data. The system is not lost. It is trying to correct itself. Lyra Voss arrived moments later, moving carefully through the terrain. She looked at the damaged module in Marcus's hand. You noticed that without enhanced vision? Marcus nodded. Humans are good at noticing things that are trying not to be noticed. Lyra almost smiled, but she stopped herself. She was still trying to understand him. Most warriors at the academy wanted to be seen. Marcus seemed comfortable being overlooked. As they searched for another route, Rax appeared from behind the trees. His confidence had returned. You are enjoying this, aren't you? He asked. Marcus looked confused. Enjoying what? showing everyone that you are different. Marcus shook his head. I'm trying to get everyone out safely. That answer bothered Rax more than an insult would have. Because Marcus was not competing. He was not trying to defeat anyone. He was simply solving a problem. After several minutes, Marcus found the source of the malfunction. A damaged communication tower was causing the entire training zone to repeat incorrect information. He used the emergency controls and restored the system. The lights changed from red to green. The automated warnings stopped. The students walked out quietly. Nobody laughed this time. Kale waited near the entrance as Marcus returned. You ignored direct instructions, the commander said. Marcus nodded. Yes. You entered an area you were not qualified to enter. Yes. Kale studied him. Most students would have offered excuses. Marcus did not. Why? Kale asked. Marcus looked back at the students who had followed him out. Because someone had to. For the first time, the commander had no immediate response. Later that evening, the academy halls were quieter than usual. Conversations changed. The human was no longer just a mistake on a roster. He was becoming a question nobody wanted to answer. But one student wanted that answer more than anyone. Rax stood outside Marcus's room, staring at the closed door. He had spent his entire life believing predators were the ones who hunted. Now he wondered if he had misunderstood what hunting really meant. Slowly, he raised his hand toward the door. And for the first time, he hesitated before knocking. The night after the training failure, Marcus Walker expected things to return to normal. He was wrong. At Varkan Academy, nothing stayed quiet for long. Especially after a human embarrassed a room full of predators without ever trying to compete with them. By the next morning, every student had a different opinion about Marcus. Some thought he was hiding a secret ability. Others believed he had simply been lucky. But Commander Kale Dravik believed luck was temporary. Skills could be measured. Instinct could be tested. And he intended to find out exactly what Marcus Walker was. The next evaluation was announced across the academy. A tactical simulation. Teams would enter an abandoned research facility built inside a massive canyon complex. Their mission was simple: recover an objective and return before the timer expired. The difference was that the facility was designed by the Kruin. It was built for species that relied on speed, strength, and advanced senses. Marcus was assigned to a team with Lyra Voss and 3 other students who clearly did not want him there. Rax looked at the assignment screen and sighed. Of all the teams, we get the human. Marcus picked up his equipment. You say that like it is a problem. Rax crossed his arms. It is. If we have to slow down, we lose. Marcus looked at the map. Then do not slow down. The answer surprised everyone. He was not asking them to protect him. He was telling them not to worry about him. Inside the simulation facility, the team moved through dark corridors filled with shifting walls and changing signals. The other students moved quickly, following the obvious route. Marcus stopped near a damaged control panel. Lyra noticed immediately. You found something. Marcus nodded. The facility is communicating with us. Rax looked confused. It is a simulation. Exactly, Marcus replied. Which means someone designed it. A few minutes later, the team reached a large chamber where the route suddenly changed. Warning lights appeared. The floor patterns shifted. The exit markers moved to different locations. The students began arguing about which direction to take. Marcus stayed quiet for a moment. He watched everyone. Then he noticed something. Everyone stopped moving. The group froze. Why? Lyra asked. Marcus pointed toward the ceiling. Because the system expects us to panic. Before anyone could respond, the training environment activated a new challenge. The room transformed, separating the team with automatic barriers. It was not dangerous, but it was designed to create confusion. The other students immediately tried to force their way through the changing layout. Marcus did the opposite. He stepped back and studied the pattern. You were just standing there? Rax shouted from the other side of the chamber. Marcus answered calmly. I am learning. For several moments, the entire room seemed chaotic. Then Marcus moved. Not quickly, not dramatically, just at the right time. He guided Lyra through a safe route between the shifting sections and showed the others where the system was repeating its cycle. One by one, the team regrouped. When they reached the objective point, the timer still had several minutes remaining. Outside the simulation chamber, the instructors were silent. Kale watched the recording twice. The human had not beaten the test by being stronger. He had not beaten it by being faster. He had simply understood the problem before everyone else did. Later, As the students left the evaluation hall, Lyra walked beside Marcus. "You know they are afraid of you now," she said. Marcus looked surprised. "Why?" Lyra glanced back at the academy behind them. "Because everyone here was taught that predators survive by dominating." She paused. "You survive differently." Marcus looked ahead. Everyone survives differently. But Lyra knew that was not the full answer. Because for the first time in her life, she had seen a creature without claws enter a predator academy and make the predators question themselves. And somewhere inside Varkun Academy, doors that had never needed locks were beginning to close. For the first time since Marcus Walker arrived at Varkun Academy, nobody laughed when he entered the training hall. That was the problem. Silence meant people were thinking. And at a place filled with the most competitive predators in the galaxy, thinking was often the beginning of a challenge. Marcus noticed the change immediately. Students stopped making jokes around him. Conversations became quieter when he walked by. Even the ones who still doubted him were watching him differently. Lyra Voss noticed it too. "You realize you changed the entire atmosphere here, right?" she asked as they walked through the academy corridor. Marcus looked confused. "I fixed a few training exercises." Lyra shook her head. "No, you made them question themselves." Marcus did not answer. He understood fear. He understood respect. But admiration from people who had wanted him gone 2 days earlier was something he was still learning how to accept. That afternoon, Commander Kale Dravik called Marcus to the observation chamber. The room overlooked the main training grounds where hundreds of students practiced below. Kale stood with his hands behind his back, watching them. "You have created a distraction," Kale said. Marcus remained quiet. "I did not come here to create one." Kale turned around. "That is exactly what concerns me. Every warrior who enters this academy wants recognition. You do not." Marcus looked through the glass at the students below. "Recognition does not help people survive." For a moment, Kale said nothing. Then he activated a holographic display. It showed old records from human exploration missions, rescue operations, failed colonies, extreme environments, adaptation reports. "Your species is unusual," Kale admitted. "You lack many natural advantages." Marcus nodded. "That is true. And yet you continue expanding into places where other species would never survive." Marcus looked at him. "Because we had to." Kale studied him carefully. That answer bothered him more than confidence would have. Humans did not seem proud of surviving difficult situations. They seemed almost tired of having to do it. Before Kale could continue, an emergency alert interrupted the chamber. A deep warning tone echoed through the academy. The main display changed instantly. A training vessel returning from an outer simulation zone had lost navigation control. It was not a combat emergency, but the automated systems were failing and the students on board could not reconnect with the academy. Instructors moved quickly toward the launch area. Kale gave orders. "Prepare recovery teams." Marcus looked at the display. Something caught his attention. "The ship is not lost." Kale looked at him. "Explain." Marcus pointed to the screen. "The signal is repeating every 40 seconds. One instructor frowned. "That means nothing. The system is damaged." Marcus shook his head. "No, it means the system is trying to communicate." Kale stepped closer. "How would you know that?" Marcus looked at the data. "Because broken things usually repeat the same mistake." The commander stared at him for a long moment. Then Marcus made a decision. "I can help." Kale immediately replied, "No, you are a student." Marcus looked back at him. "So are the people on that ship." The words landed differently this time. Not like a challenge, like a reminder. Minutes later, Marcus, Lyra, and a small recovery team entered the transport craft heading toward the outer simulation zone. As the academy disappeared behind them, Lyra looked at Marcus. "You know, most people would be nervous right now." Marcus checked the equipment panel. "I am." She looked surprised. "You are." He nodded. "Being nervous means you understand the situation." Lyra smiled slightly. "Then why do you always look calm?" Marcus looked out at the empty space ahead. "Because panic has never helped me think." The recovery mission had barely started when the navigation system failed again. The lights inside the craft flickered. The communication screen went dark. Everyone looked toward Marcus. This time, nobody was laughing. They were waiting to see what the human would notice first. And somewhere back at Varkun Academy, Commander Kale Dravik watched the mission feed in silence, realizing something he had not considered before. Marcus Walker was not dangerous because he was stronger than predators. He was dangerous because when everything went wrong, he became the person everyone looked toward. The transport craft drifted beyond the safety range of Varkan Academy, surrounded by the endless darkness of deep space. Inside the cabin, the silence was different from before. It was not the silence of people judging Marcus Walker. It was the silence of people waiting for him to decide what happened next. The navigation system continued to fail. The communication panel flickered between static and incomplete signals. The recovery team checked their equipment, but nobody moved without looking toward Marcus first. Lyra Voss noticed the change. A few days ago, nobody wanted his advice. Now, everyone was quietly asking for it without saying the words. "You know they are watching you, right?" Lyra said. Marcus looked at the damaged controls. "Who?" "Everyone." Marcus gave a small nod. "That sounds inconvenient." Lyra almost laughed. Even now, when the situation was uncertain, he still sounded like someone discussing a delayed flight instead of being trapped in a malfunctioning spacecraft. But Lyra was beginning to understand. Marcus was not calm because he thought nothing could go wrong. He was calm because he accepted that things could go wrong at any moment. "The signal is repeating," Marcus said. He leaned closer to the navigation display. "Every 40 seconds. Same pattern." The pilot looked over. "We already checked the transmission. It is corrupted." Marcus shook his head. "No, it is compressed." The room became quiet. "What is the difference?" Lyra asked. Marcus pointed at the screen. "A damaged signal creates random errors. A compressed signal keeps structure. Someone or something is still controlling it." The team exchanged uncertain looks. The idea changed everything. The ship was not simply lost. Something had guided it away from the Academy. Before anyone could respond, a new message appeared on the screen. It was not from the missing vessel. It was from Varkan Academy. Commander Kale Dravik appeared on the communication display. His expression was serious. "Return immediately," Kale ordered. Marcus looked at the message. "Why?" Kale hesitated for a fraction of a second. It was small, but Marcus noticed. "Because this mission is no longer a training exercise." Lyra stepped closer to the screen. "Commander, what are you not telling us?" Kale remained silent. That silence answered the question. Marcus looked around the craft. The malfunction was not an accident. Kale's eyes narrowed. "Careful, human. I am not making an accusation," Marcus replied. "I am looking at the evidence." For the first time, Kale did not dismiss him. The commander disconnected the call. The team continued forward. Minutes later, they reached the missing training vessel. It was intact, but something was wrong. The ship was operating perfectly. Too perfectly. Marcus entered the control area and immediately noticed something unusual. The systems were not broken. They had been redirected. "Someone changed the route manually," he said. Lyra looked at the controls. "But only Academy command staff can access this system." Everyone became still. Back at Varkan Academy, Commander Kale Dravik stood alone in the control room, watching the recovery team uncover the truth. He had created the navigation failure himself. Not to harm anyone. Not to sabotage the students. He wanted to prove a theory. He wanted to expose the weakness behind Marcus Walker's reputation. Kale believed the human was simply skilled at controlled situations. He wanted a real test. A situation where intelligence was not enough. A situation where instincts mattered. But as Marcus discovered the altered system, Kale realized something unexpected. The human had not failed the test. He had identified the test itself. Kale watched Marcus on the monitor as the human calmly restored the ship's navigation and guided the team home. For the first time in decades, the legendary commander felt uncertain. Because he had spent his entire career studying predators. He understood strength. He understood aggression. He understood survival. But Marcus Walker represented something different. A species that did not need to prove it was dangerous. When the recovery team returned, Kale was waiting at the landing platform. Marcus stepped down from the craft and looked directly at him. "You wanted to see what I would do under pressure." Kale said nothing. Marcus continued. "The problem is, you forgot something." The commander looked at him. "What?" Marcus replied quietly. "Pressure reveals people. It does not create them." For the first time, Kale Dravik had no answer. And deep inside the academy, a new concern began spreading among the predators. If Marcus could stay calm during a test designed to break him, what would happen when he faced a situation that was not a test at all? The morning after the failed navigation test, Varkan Academy felt different. The halls were quieter. Not peaceful. Careful. the kind of quiet that came when people were watching something they did not understand. Marcus Walker walked through the main corridor carrying a simple training bag, but every step seemed to attract attention. The same students who once laughed at him now moved aside without being asked. Marcus noticed. He just did not know what to do with it. Lyra Voss walked beside him, studying the reactions around them. "You really do not see it, do you?" she asked. Marcus looked at her. "See what? They are afraid of you." Marcus stopped walking. "Why?" Lyra looked surprised. "Because you keep doing things that should not be possible for someone like you." Marcus shook his head. "I am not doing anything impossible." "That is exactly what makes it strange," Lyra replied. "Everyone here believes survival comes from being stronger than the thing in front of you." Marcus continued walking. "That works sometimes." "And what works the rest of the time?" she asked. Marcus looked ahead, understanding what you are facing. Before Lyra could answer, every display in the corridor changed. The academy symbol disappeared, replaced by an emergency notification. All students were ordered to report to the central command hall. When Marcus and Lyra arrived, they immediately noticed something was wrong. Commander Kale Dravik stood at the center of the room, surrounded by instructors and senior students. His expression was more serious than Marcus had ever seen. "An external evaluation group has arrived," Kale announced. "They will observe today's final survival assessment." A wave of excitement moved through the room. The visiting group was known across the galaxy as the Apex Council, an organization that judged the abilities of elite warrior academies. For most students, this was an opportunity to prove themselves. For Kale, it was a chance to prove something else. He looked directly at Marcus. "You will participate." Several students exchanged surprised looks. Marcus nodded. "Understood." The final assessment took place in the ancient training valley outside the academy. Unlike previous exercises, this environment was not artificial. It was a real section of Ver Prime. The terrain was unpredictable. The weather could change without warning. The academy only provided basic equipment. The objective was simple: reach the observation point and return with your team. Marcus was grouped with Lyra and several advanced students, including Rax. At the starting line, Rax looked at Marcus. "This is different from the other tests." Marcus adjusted his equipment. "Yes. There are no systems to study, no patterns to find." Marcus looked toward the valley. "Everything has a pattern." The teams moved forward. At first, the advanced students took the lead. They moved confidently, using their natural abilities to navigate the environment. Marcus stayed behind, watching. Then the first problem appeared. A sudden weather shift covered the valley in thick dust clouds. Visibility dropped. Communication signals became unreliable. The teams became separated. Lyra stayed close to Marcus. "What now?" she asked. Marcus looked around. The others were searching for a path. Marcus was searching for something else. "We stop pretending we know where we are." Lyra frowned. "That sounds like a bad plan." "It is a bad plan if we stop there." He pointed toward the ground. "Look." Small marks appeared across the terrain. Not footprints. Not tracks. Signs of movement from the environment itself. The valley was changing because of the weather. Marcus realized the safest route was not the fastest route. Before the team could move, a signal interrupted their communication. It was not from the academy. It was from one of the missing teams. Their equipment had failed, and they were unable to find their way back. The instructors above the valley prepared to intervene. But Kale stopped them. Everyone looked at the commander. "Let them continue," Kale said. The instructors were confused. "Commander?" Kale watched Marcus on the monitor. "I need to know if I was wrong about him." Deep in the valley, Marcus heard the same message. A team of predators needed help. They had more strength, better senses, more experience. But they were lost. Marcus looked toward Lyra. "We are changing direction." Rax looked shocked. "The objective is the observation point." Marcus nodded. "I know. Then why are we leaving it?" Marcus answered without hesitation. "Because the mission was never the point." The team turned away from victory and moved toward the others. And from the command hall, Kale Dravik watched in silence as the human made a choice every predator in the academy had been trained to avoid. Marcus Walker chose responsibility over recognition. For the first time, Kale understood the difference between a hunter and a protector, and that difference was about to change everything. The storm over Ver Prime grew stronger with every passing minute. The dust clouds moved across the valley like a living wall, hiding the landscape and confusing even the most advanced sensors. For most students at Varkan Academy, the situation had become a test of endurance. For Marcus Walker, it became something else. It became a reminder. He had seen situations like this before, not on alien worlds, not in training exercises, but in places where people depended on someone making the right decision when everything stopped making sense. Marcus and his team moved deeper into the valley, following the faint signals from the missing students. Rax walked beside him, quieter than usual. Finally, he spoke. "I do not understand you." Marcus glanced at him. "That makes two of us." Rax looked confused. "You had a chance to prove yourself. The observation team was watching. The entire academy was watching. You could have finished first." Marcus continued walking. "And then what?" Rax had no answer. Marcus looked back at him. Would that have helped the students who needed us? For the first time, Rax did not argue. The team eventually found the missing students near a damaged communication tower. They were not defeated. They were simply stuck because the environment had changed faster than they could adapt. Several advanced students had relied on their natural abilities, but the storm had created conditions where those advantages became unreliable. Marcus approached the group. "Everyone okay?" One of the students nodded. "We lost the signal. We thought the route back was impossible." Marcus looked at the tower. It was not impossible. It was just different. Lyra watched him closely. She realized something important. Marcus never treated obstacles as enemies. He treated them as information. The group began moving back toward the observation point together. But before they reached the end of the valley, something unexpected happened. The official assessment timer stopped. Every communication channel opened at once. Commander Kale Dravik appeared on their screens. "All teams, return immediately." The students were confused. The final evaluation was not complete, but Kale's expression revealed something had changed. When they returned to the academy, the reason became clear. The Apex Council observers were no longer watching from the gallery. They were gathered around the command chamber, studying the mission recordings. One of them, a senior evaluator named Varen Sol, looked at Marcus with obvious interest. "The human altered the objective," Varen said. "He abandoned the assigned path." Kale remained silent. Marcus expected criticism. Instead, the evaluator continued. And by doing so, he achieved the real objective. The room became quiet. Marcus looked at Kale. The commander finally spoke. The survival assessment was designed to measure leadership under uncertainty. He paused. "Most students focus on winning." Lyra looked at Marcus. "And he focused on everyone returning." Kale nodded slightly. It was not a compliment he gave easily. For decades, this academy trained predators to believe the strongest individual survives. He looked at Marcus. "You demonstrated something different." Marcus waited. Kale continued. "Sometimes the strongest individual is the one who makes sure others survive." The words surprised everyone, especially Marcus. He had expected another challenge. Another test. Not acceptance. Later that evening, Marcus stood outside the academy overlooking the distant lights of Vare Prime. Lyra joined him. "You know what happens now, right?" she asked. Marcus looked over. "What?" "The academy will study you. The students will try to understand you. The council will want answers." Marcus sighed softly. "That sounds exhausting." Lyra smiled. "You really do not understand what you have done." Marcus looked toward the training grounds below. "I just help people." Lyra shook her head. "That is exactly why they cannot understand you." Behind them, Commander Kale watched from the observation deck. But this time, he was not watching a student. He was studying a possibility. A possibility that the galaxy had misunderstood humanity for far longer than anyone realized. Then an alert appeared on his terminal. A message from the Apex Council. The final assessment results were approved. But there was an additional request. They wanted Marcus Walker to participate in a demonstration reserved only for the most dangerous warriors in the galaxy. Kale read the message twice. Because he knew what the council did not. They were not inviting Marcus because they thought he was weak. They were inviting him because they were starting to wonder what would happen if a human ever stopped holding back. The message from the Apex Council changed everything at Varkan Academy. For generations, the most respected warriors in the galaxy had been invited to the Apex demonstration. It was not a competition. It was not a battle. It was a test of understanding. The greatest fighters, strategists, and leaders were brought together to show what their civilizations had learned. And now, for the first time in history, they requested a human. Marcus Walker stood in the preparation chamber looking at the equipment placed in front of him. It was designed for species with different bodies, different instincts, different ways of thinking. He picked up a small communication device and examined it carefully. Lyra Voss watched from the doorway. You know, most people would be excited right now. Marcus looked over. I'm trying to figure out why. Lyra smiled. Because the entire galaxy is watching. Marcus looked back at the equipment. That is exactly why I am not excited. Lyra tilted her head. Why? Marcus answered honestly. Because when everyone is watching, people stop looking for the truth. They start looking for a story they already believe. That sentence stayed with Lyra. She had spent her entire life surrounded by predators who wanted to prove they were the strongest. Marcus was the first person she had met who seemed more interested in being useful than being impressive. The demonstration began in the central arena of Varkun Academy. Representatives from dozens of worlds filled the viewing platforms. Some came expecting to see a human fail. Others came because they were curious. Commander Kale Dravik stood beside the instructors, watching Marcus enter the field. The challenge was simple. A team had to navigate an unknown environment, solve unexpected problems, and guide a group of simulated survivors to safety. The other participants moved quickly. They searched for the fastest route. They calculated risks. They relied on their training. Marcus did something different. He stopped. He listened. The audience began whispering. Why is he waiting? One observer asked. Kill did not answer. He already knew. Marcus was not trying to defeat the environment. He was trying to understand it. The simulation changed. New obstacles appeared. The conditions became more complex. Several teams rushed forward and began losing valuable time. Marcus adjusted his approach immediately. He changed direction, helped other participants understand the situation, and kept moving. The most surprising moment came near the end. Marcus reached the final point first. Everyone expected him to claim victory. Instead, he turned back. He went to help the teams still struggling behind him. The arena became silent. The evaluators looked confused. One of them asked, why would he sacrifice his result? Kale finally answered, because he does not see them as competition. Marcus brought everyone back together before the final signal ended. When the results appeared, the ranking was not based on speed. It was based on success, teamwork, and survival. Marcus Walker was named the highest evaluation of the demonstration. Not because he was the strongest, not because he was the fastest, because he understood something the galaxy had forgotten. A civilization was not measured by how easily it could defeat others. It was measured by what it chose to protect. Later that evening, the Academy held a formal recognition ceremony. The same students who once laughed at Marcus now stood quietly as his name was announced. Rax approached him afterward. For once, he had no challenge to offer. I thought predators survived by standing above everything else, Rax admitted. Marcus looked at him. Some do. And humans. Marcus looked toward the stars above Vare Prime. Humans survived because someone always chose to stand beside someone else. Rax remembered those words. So did everyone who heard them. Commander Kale approached Marcus one final time. The legendary Karuan warrior who had once believed strength was measured by dominance now saw something greater. I spent my life teaching predators how to survive, Kale said. You taught us why survival matters. Marcus gave a small nod. Then maybe everyone learned something. Years later, the story of Marcus Walker would spread across the galaxy. Not as the tale of the strongest warrior at Varkun Academy. Not as the story of a human who defeated predators. It became the story of a human who entered a place built to celebrate power and reminded everyone that true strength was never about having the sharpest claws. It was about having the discipline not to use them when you did not need to. And from that day forward, whenever young warriors asked why the doors of Varkun Academy were checked twice every night, the instructors gave the same answer. Because once, a human walked into the greatest predator school in the galaxy. And the predators learned they had been studying the wrong thing all along.